Hi, Nick here, and today I'm going to save you a fortune in sandpaper and elbow grease by showing you how to use one of these, a scraper. A scraper is just a thin piece of tool steel, about 24 thousandths to 39 thousandths of an inch thick, or if you live anywhere in the world but the United States, about 1/6 of a millimeter to 1 millimeter thick. It comes in all sorts of different shapes and sizes. The rectangle is the most common, but there are other sizes and shapes, as you can see here. And if you can't find one that you like, you can always make your own, either from old scrapers or sometimes I use steel from an old saw. A scraper cuts with a burr on its edge. The edge is actually peened over, like we show here in this illustration in my book on sanding and planing. See that? There's a burr right there on the edge, and that's what digs into the wood and removes a thin shaving. Now, when sharpening most cutting tools, you actually want to remove the burr. But on this particular tool, the burr is the cutting edge. And, as you can see, it's pretty effective. But it doesn't last too long. The edge will usually wear out in 15 to 30 minutes. So in order to use a scraper, you have to know how to sharpen it. And there are two different methods, the traditional way and the easy way. I'm going to show you both. The traditional method seems to create the most consistent burr, and the burr seems to last a little longer. To do it, you need two tools, a burnisher and a file. The burnisher is just a round piece of tool steel, polished so that it's good and smooth. You can actually use the shank of a drill or, in this case, a mill. The file needs to be a single cut, second cut mill file, flat on both sides. Now, single cut refers to the tooth pattern. As you can see here, it's cut just with lines across it, just creating a series of teeth. Don't get this confused with cross cut, which is cut from two different directions and creates a diamond pattern. Second cut refers to the tooth size. Files are rated coarse, bastard, second cut, and fine, which really means coarse, medium fine, and fine. But tool makers are relatively that straightforward. So second cut it is. To sharpen it the traditional way, first, let's clamp it in a vise, and we're going to joint the edge using the mill file. Hold the file 90 degrees from the face of the scraper. Now, if you're doing this right, the iron filings that are rolling off of this are actually little curls. If you look at them under a magnifying glass, they'll look like little planer shavings. Okay, let's take the file and remove the very last part of the old burr on each side. Now we're going to raise a new burr. Take the scraper out of the vise, lay it flat on your workbench, hold the burnisher so that it's 5 degrees from the face of the scraper, and as hard as you can, press down and rub it back and forth. You English guys actually call these burnishers a ticketer because of the tick it makes when it comes off the edge. Let's do both sides of the edge. Now we've raised a burr as two little horns on the edge of that scraper. We're going to put the scraper back in the vise, and now we're going to turn the burrs. Hold the burnisher 5 degrees from the edge this time. Press down hard and rub back and forth on either side. Now 5 degrees the other way. And you can actually feel the turned burr that you just raised. Let's test it and see how we did. Oh yeah. Look at those shavings. That's just right. And if you turn it the other way, you have a burr on the other side. Now, to sharpen a scraper the easy way, let's once again clamp this in a vise. And this time, we're not going to use the burnisher. All we're going to use is the mill file. And we're going to start by removing the old burr and then doing the joining. Get some good passes with a lot of resistance, and that's it. We're actually going to use the burr that was raised by the file. See how we did? There we go. We're getting some nice shavings. Now if we turn it around, see, it doesn't cut as well. So you really only get one usable burr. But it leaves a smooth surface, and it only takes 15 seconds to put that burr back on again. So, which method works best? The traditional method or the easy method? Well, the traditional method creates two consistent burrs, one on each side of the scraper, and since these burrs are a little larger, they tend to last a little bit longer. On the other hand, the easy method creates a usable burr on one side of the scraper, and it only takes a few seconds. So, both work. It's whichever one you prefer. All right, so far we've just talked about sharpening rectangular scrapers, scrapers that have straight edges on all sides. Well, what happens when you need to sharpen a scraper with rounded edges, like this or this French curve over here? Well, for the most part, you can use the same tool set that we've been using all along, especially on the convex curve. As you can see, I can easily follow that curve with the mill file. Ooh, that sound just goes right through you, doesn't it? Ah. Then joint the edges. Raise the burrs with the burnisher. And finally, turn the burrs. Let's see how we did over here with this scrap. There you go. Yeah, we're getting some good curves on both edges. However, when we get into doing the concave curves, you can already see this problem coming. There's no way for me to get in there with the mill file. For that, I need to move to a sharpening stone, like this honing stone that they make for gouges, or this sharpening rod. I can use the curved surfaces on these stones to get into that curve and joint the edge. Wipe it with the file to take off any possible burrs, and then let's turn the burrs, or raise them, and then turn them with the burnisher. Check our work here on this piece of round stock. Not bad. Oh yeah, we're getting some good curls. So that works pretty well. But what happens when you need to get that burnisher into this tight little curl here in this French curve? That can be a problem. And to deal with it, I'm going to show you a trick on the drill press. I've joined the edges of this French curve scraper with a sharpening rod, and I've tilted the table of my drill press to about 5 degrees. In the bit, I've got a hardened steel pin. Now, in order to raise and turn the burr of any scraper, you've got to use something that's harder than the scraper itself. Scrapers are normally hardened to between 48 and 53 on the Rockwell C scale. Burnishers are about 10 points higher than that, or about 60 on the same scale. These hardened steel pins, which you can find in most hardware stores, are between 55 and 58 on the Rockwell C scale. If you can't find a hardened steel pin, you may have something around your shop that you could use. For example, you could cut off and use the shank of this old high-speed steel router bit. Or, if you know a metal worker, or you are a metal worker, you could use the shank of this end mill. Drill bits, well, some drill bits are candidates, but not all. This blue steel bit might be hard enough, so might a cobalt bit. In order to tell whether or not the bit you've chosen will work, try to scratch it with a scraper. See that? I made a big deep scratch with this scraper in this blue steel bit, so this won't work. However, I take that old high steel router bit, and it just slides right off. So this will work. All right, let's make a burr here. I've adjusted this drill press to run at between 1500 and 1600 RPM. I'm going to turn it on. And I'm pressing the scraper against this pin as hard as I possibly can. And it's raising and turning the burr at the same time. Okay, that feels pretty burry. Let's see how I did. All right, getting some girls. Let's go do some scraping. The easiest part of all this scraperology is actually using the scraper. You just rest the sharpened edge on the wood, tilt it at maybe 70 or 80 degrees to the wood, and push forward, or pull back. It's up to you. When you're using a rectangular scraper, it's usually a good idea to hold it in both hands, take your thumbs, and press right there in the middle of the scraper to bow it slightly. This lifts the corners of the scraper up off the board so you don't scratch the wood, leave long scratches. Of course, it's also hard on your thumbs. If you do a lot of this, you're going to find you want to either make yourself a scraper holder, like that, or invest in a cabinet scraper, which is a metal scraper holder. As you work, the scraper will leave curls at first, and then as the burr starts to wear away, those curls will get smaller and smaller until finally all you're making is sawdust. At that point, it's time to sharpen the scraper once again. The surface, you'll find, is very, very smooth. The scraper will quickly remove the mill marks and any small imperfections, and you can jump right from a scraper to 120 or even 150 sandpaper, saving you an immense amount of work, not to mention the money you save in sandpaper, just like I promised at the beginning.